It's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Esther Mimi Schmidt. Dr. Schmidt is Associate Professor of Interior Design, Design History and Heritage Studies. She is the Associate Dean of Global Initiatives and International Collaborations and Director of the Center for Historic Houses at OP Jindal Global University. This is near Delhi. In her capacity as Director of the Center for Historic Houses, she introduced Palace Day to India on 19 July 2020 in collaboration with the European Network for Royal Palaces that had started the initiative in 2016. It put Indian palaces on the global map, created a social media buzz with over 85,000 views, and increased visibility and business opportunities for the historic Indian palaces amidst the pandemic. In July 2020, during the pandemic, the Center for Historic Houses introduced a weekly online lecture series featuring Indian palaces and their owners entitled Resilience, Historic Houses of India and Their Custodians, which was well attended from people all over the world, including heritage professionals, academics, design professionals, museum curators, CEOs, and heritage enthusiasts. Her expertise in the research, design, development, and promotion of historic houses and palaces. In that capacity, she has developed designs for listed buildings, included UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and created innovative contemporary uses for historic buildings. In India, one of our main concerns is to link between the heritage sector and the adaptive reuse of buildings with poverty alleviation through social entrepreneurship and support of local artisans. She has studied at the University of Oxford, the University of Cambridge, the University of Vienna, and received her PhD from University of Oxford. Passionate about historic houses, she has lived and stayed in unusual houses, from a Baroque palace, a rickety summer villa of the Imperial Habsburg family in the Austrian mountains, a monastery, a synagogue, the house of the 17th century astronomer Edmund Halley, the painter Gustav Klimt's magical lakeside villa, an American Neopalladian villa, a hen house near the 18th century garden paradise of Wallets, Germany, famous for its artificial volcano eruption. Winner of many awards, scholarships, and grants, Dr. Schmidt has written several papers and research publications. She has taught courses on history of interiors, principles of interior design, East meets West in the architecture and design, historic houses of India and their collections, a history of furniture and objects, furnishing the self, a history of rooms, introduction to the history of conservation, design writing, and lot more. It's our privilege to have Dr. Schmidt with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. As I said, I'm really, really thrilled to be in Mumbai, which is one of my favorite cities in India. Thank you very much for having me. I'll just screen share now. Just give me a few minutes to do this. So I hope you're all able to see it. And I hope you're also able to see this, the change of this slides. Today, I'm going to talk about the future of historic houses of India. And somehow when we talk about historic houses, we think it's all about the past, but I don't think so. It's as much about the present as it is about the future to make them relevant. Here you see a number of some of the spectacular houses of India. And of course, we all know that these historic houses are not only a story about their history, but also about their owners, also about the people who created them and who created the objects in them. And here you can see an image of Akshita Banj Deo from Bilgaria Palace in Orissa. And she is a representative of the young generation of owners of historic houses. She's only 27 and she's done really some incredible initiatives, especially in the area of social entrepreneurship. So when you see these buildings, this is really my whole lecture is about what these buildings represent. Maybe you recognize some of them. In the middle, you see probably the most famous of all of them. It's the Lake Palace. And this was one of the very earliest attempts to open a palace up for tourism. It's known all over the world. To many, it is the most magical place on earth where many people dream of being. In fact, I've never visited it. I have an invitation. I'd love to go. And I'm not married and I always wanted to get married. So you see, I don't have the husband, but I have the wedding destination. It's the Lake Palace, definitely in Udaipur. But now with the pandemic and basically tourism being interrupted, we need to think of other alternatives. And the Center for Historic Houses that I set up, and I'll come to it later, is very much concerned with non-visitor related business opportunities as well. And in the middle, maybe you recognize this image. It is, I think, one of the most beautiful rooms in the world. The combination of blue and white, it's just so uplifting. This is in City Palace, Jaipur. And this to me represents also some of the best ways of how you actually manage a historic house. It has a fabulous museum. It has great curators and great scholars who publish wonderful works. It also has a really fantastic hotel, and they really are adapting to the modern times. You can even book a room and stay with the royal family online. And here you see Bilgaria Palace on the right, which was built during the 19th century. And on the left, you have one of the most spectacular hill forts in India. It's Merranger Fort. And this is not only about the past, but Merranger Fort is, to my mind, one of the best managed properties in India, part of the royal family of Jaipur. It has a visitor center, a fantastic cafe, restaurant, a wonderful museum shop. They do fantastic exhibitions. They collaborate with other institutions worldwide, and they organize festivals. So this is really a place that is not only about the past. It celebrates the past, but it's also very much about the present and involving members of the community. And just to give you a guess, I mean, do you have any idea how many people visit Merranger Fort annually? Just can you give me a ballpark figure? What do you think?
100,000?
Well, 1,400,000 before the pandemic. So you really see the relevance of these historic houses. Many of them have more visitor numbers than museums. And the Center for Historic Houses is now the first institution of its kind in India to form a link between these historic buildings. And we are currently creating a network of historic house museums with a focus on palaces and forts, working with some of the finest curators and best museums in the world. And here on the left, you also have Ahelia Fort, which is part of the royal family of Indore, the Holkars. You see the father and son. And this is also a fort that is beautifully managed, beautifully restored with a lot of respect, and many initiatives in the local community, from the temples that are there, restoration work, but also education work, and particularly the support of weavers and local artisans. So really, all of these buildings represent much, much more than meets the eyes, and they're very relevant to our society. This is a study we also want to do to really show the importance of these historic buildings for Indian society. This is where I come from. This is a small village in Germany. I grew up in this tiny village called Hammersbach. It's about 15 kilometers from Hanau am Main, and it's about 40 kilometers from Frankfurt am Main. And as you can see, the church was the main building in these villages. You know, it was the religious community, of course, with the most important building. And this is the landscape that you know very well from fairy tales, because the brothers Grimm were born nearby. And this is the landscape that featured in the Grimm fairy tales. And so every 3 to 5 kilometers from where I grew up, there was a historic house of great significance. What you see on the left is the Ronneburg, one of the best examples of medieval fortresses in Germany. And what you see on the right is a beautiful part of a historic ensemble, which was actually the workshop of the most famous cabinet maker in the 18th century. When I grew up, I didn't know the history of these buildings. And I think this is how we kind of often perceive these historic buildings. They are part of our home. They constitute a sense of familiarity, but we need to unravel their hidden histories. I found out about it much later, and actually when I was old enough to ride a bicycle, when I was 15, I was cycling to one of these historic houses, and I'd dreamed all of my childhood what these houses would look like from the inside. And I was so eager. I opened the door without being asked, and it was open actually, and what I saw was very disappointing. But this has become a kind of lifelong obsession of mine in my profession, to see a historic house, to want to bring it back to life, and to create interiors inspired by the past, with respect for the past, but not in a stale way, but also in a contemporary way. So here you see this now. The Ronneburg has been used as a film location for fairy tales, some beautiful fairy tales. I can really recommend them highly. Here you see a member of the Röntgen family, the famous cabinet maker. And here you see on the left, the brothers Grimm, who wrote the fairy tales that you are so well familiar with. And I just have a very short video to tell you very much the story of historic houses, namely from these you could see these buildings were in the middle of nowhere, really in a tiny, tiny village surrounded by forests and meadows. But still, even in the 18th century, these places were connected to the whole world. And this is very much also the story of the Center for Historic Houses, namely to build bridges between the past and the present, bridges between institutions, between owners of historic houses, heritage experts, universities, and bridges between East and West.
In the State Hermitage, there's a hall that contains a collection of great furniture masterpieces. Among them is a unique bureau decorated with a figure of the god Apollo as an allegory of science. Who was the craftsman who created this and other unique examples of applied art? David Röntgen was born at Herrenhag near Frankfurt am Main in 1743. Into the family of the cabinet maker Abraham Röntgen and his wife Susanna Maria. Later, the family moved to Neuwied on the Rhine near Koblenz, where David soon took over his father's business. In the 1760s and 70s, the workshop produced splendid inlaid furniture in the Rococo style. A distinctive feature of the great craftsman's output was the built-in mechanisms that made it possible to transform pieces of furniture, producing unique works of applied art. The mechanisms were designed by the gifted mechanic and clockmaker Peter Kinzing, who collaborated with Röntgen. In 1783, Röntgen turned his eye to Russia. The celebrated craftsman's interest proved very timely. The intensive construction of palaces in and around the capital required appropriate furnishings, and Empress Catherine II invited the leading cabinet maker and mechanic of the age to St. Petersburg. The scale of his deliveries to the Russian...
So this is really interesting because I also come from the same region, and now I'm all the way in New Delhi. Who would have guessed this at the time when I grew up as a small child in this village? And my family, part of the other family comes from Thuringia, and they were actually cabinet makers and jewelers. So interestingly, I'm kind of following in these footsteps. These are some of the beautiful historic houses where I lived, because when I grew up, this was not really a profession. If you love historic houses, what do you do with it? You know, you study medicine, you end up as a doctor or something like this, but historic houses, what job is this? So I was kind of very adventurous, like this Mr. Röntgen in the 18th century, not afraid to travel so far. And I invented my own profession. I created it. I was very entrepreneurial in this way. And as a result, I've left also a very interesting life, living in one of the most extraordinary buildings and leading an unusual way of life. So here you see the beautiful palace in Vienna where we lived, and when my daughter was 3, she celebrated her birthday. In there you see the 3 arches. This is where she had her birthday party. I mean, so this is a really wonderful memories. This is the house I lived in the United States when I worked as a curatorial JP Morgan fellow. And here, the interiors, you see, this was the house they had provided for me, so very, very generous. In addition to staying in a beautiful private house on Fifth Avenue to do some research in New York. And on the right, you see the beautiful villa of the Habsburg imperial family, which was our house in the mountains. And Empress Sissy's bedroom was my drawing room with a beautiful view of the mountains. And you see the mountains here. This was behind the house. And then I came to India, and with me traveled all of my ideas, all of my education. And I saw some of these beautiful buildings, and I arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock I was already on my way to Rajasthan, where I really also love to be, especially with these beautiful buildings. And I traveled with Amarnath from Nimrana hotels, and he invited me to visit some of these buildings. He had just finished Merranger Fort, which is surely one of the most ambitious building projects in our times, because who would actually dare to do something like this, to continue building? And this is something where I really felt that India is also setting the pace, where other countries can learn from us here. Because after the Second World War, many new laws concerning heritage emerged, including the Venice Charter, which I think is now out of date. The Venice Charter says that if you build something new as part of an old building, it has to look different. And I think the result of this was really kind of hideous, ugly structures. And, look at Tijara Palace. Actually, you can't even see which aspects are new, which ones are old. And I think Amarnath is doing a wonderful job, actually continuing to build in the traditional way. And I think, this is the best example to show how it can be done. And it's not Walt Disney. It's not, something horrible, but it's something beautiful and respectful. So, and one of the buildings that I saw was this one, Deeg Palace. And then I saw some of the problems and lost opportunities. Deeg Palace is one of the greatest water gardens in India. When you come there, you spend, I think, 20 rupees on the entrance ticket. It's under the ASI, still partly owned by the royal family, the only Jat family, royal family. And you can't spend a single rupee to benefit the local community. There is no shop, there is no cafe, and it's actually really difficult as a visitor, because what do you do? I mean, where do you eat? So I think this kind of management is not something that is an example. This is something that we need to change, because these historic buildings don't only cost a lot of money to restore, but they are opportunities, because especially they are in the middle of nowhere, and the local community can benefit from these visitors. They can have jobs, and the money that visitors spend, can benefit the community. And I really felt I need to do something about this. And a lot of countries in the West have historic houses association. For some reason, India didn't have that. So I knew I had to do something, and I set up the Center for Historic Houses in 2019 at Jindal Global University. So we have these 3 main stakeholders. It's particularly aimed at owners of historic houses, but also at heritage expert, artisans, and related industries, including hospitality sector, and also at the public and the government. So we are building bridges between the past and the present, between East and West, between East and East as well, because we are also talking to other countries in Asia and historic houses associations, between owners of historic houses. And everybody told me this cannot be done. Nobody wants to work together. But this is something that inspires me when people say it cannot be done. And actually, I'll show you later that we managed, maybe as the first group, to unite owners of historic houses, and so that everybody could see the benefit from such an alliance. And I started initially, with just the idea in a small office, and doing everything on my own. And I thought I'll do what I can do best as an academic. I start with a conference, and I wanted to do something that is really relevant. I wanted to show that these historic houses can help us to address some of the pressing issues of our times, such as water. And of course, you all know that India has some amazing water architecture, from step wells, and the wisdom of conserving water, and that is now greatly challenged by pollution. And for instance, here you see the lake palace. These were usually artificial lakes in Rajasthan, And they were not only created for the benefit of the royal families, but also for the local community to have access to water. And so unfortunately, many, much of the dirty water, polluted water is now led into these reservoirs. And this is something we really need to address. And, a fantastic job has been done in Jaipur. The Lake Palace has been renovated, and also the lake has been restored. And now birds are coming back, people are coming back, and it's such a beautiful place to be. And when I was organizing this conference, I talked to the bureau chief of the Financial Times, which is also happens to be my favorite newspaper, actually. And she immediately changed her travel plans and went to visit it. And she agreed with me, and she wrote this article. This was also the first time the Center for Historic Houses was mentioned. Cultural heritage offers hope for tourism. We want to go a little bit beyond this, especially with the pandemic. We want to have solutions that go beyond tourism. So when we established this Center for Historic Houses, this is what we discovered. So while there are many heritage initiatives, there is little communication between the individual heritage organizations. And I think this needs to change. We really need to have more transparency. We don't need to have these kind of small groups that don't talk to each other and just, do their own thing. And the same is true for historic house owners. Sometimes it's just because they had so much on their shoulders and they were so busy. But, once they start listening to others and they see that everybody has the same problems, they can also find solutions more quickly. So we really need to work together. Ownership of privately owned historic houses is often unclear. So we really depend very, very strongly on our legal experts. And maybe you know that Jindal University is the #1 law university also in India. Manoj's son is also studying law there. So there are questions of property laws. I think that private property should be a constitutional right. We are lobbying for this. There are questions of inheritance law. There are some difficult laws with the Enemy Property Act, for example. So there are many, many legal aspects relating to historic houses. Owners are in touch only with their relatives, but they seem to be unaware of major trends in the heritage sector. Last week, we organized a fantastic conference called Great Minds in Heritage in Historic Houses. This was the first time, I think, that that management organizations, historic houses associations in the West were collaborating and heard about management of historic houses here in India. There, of course, is a great conscious awareness of Asian studies, but not about heritage management and historic houses. So this was the first attempt, and people were so excited and enthusiastic. People from the Smithsonian, the Louvre, some of the greatest arts institutions like the Getty, they all wanted to participate. Some of them even canceled kind of film shootings that they had to participate in this event. And that makes me very proud. That makes me very happy that we can have such a relevant discussion that is really, truly global. Owners are difficult to reach and disconnected from heritage initiatives. That is really a disadvantage. And owners sometimes have little knowledge of architectural history of their property. So I had some owners who told me, well, this is a medieval structure. And when I came, I thought it was a 19th century structure. So, there's a lot of need to do more research. And responses from government officials working at historic property is often slow and hampers the decision making. So I really felt our best initiative is to work with private owners, although now we've also been approached by the government, which makes me also very happy about consultancy. And there's no overall internet presence. So we really felt we needed to kind of unify this section. So here, this is this again, and now I wanted to look at these individual sectors that I've described. So because all of these buildings represent these 4 aspects. So Merranger Fort, I mentioned, as one of the best examples of exhibition museum practice. This talk is about historic houses in the future. I think this is the future, to use these historic houses as great examples of best museum practice. And this is something we are particularly working on at the moment. I'll have a presentation at the Louvre next week, because we are collaborating with the curator of Asian art at the Louvre, which is of course a very big honor, given that we are so young and we're only established in 2019. And you will probably be aware of that the Louvre is the most visited museum in the world. So this is something where we also need to gain further support, because that is a really spectacular idea. And currently all the palace museums are not connected. There's an international organization for historic house museums, not one member from India. We need to change this. So I want to form this kind of network of all the palace museums, such as Udaipur, Jaipur, Kota, and all the other kind of museums and forts. I think that's really important for best practice. And maybe, even Rashtrapati Bhavan has a museum, of course. These need to be connected, because these are the jewels we have here in India. And also other curators all over the world are very interested in hearing what is happening here in India, and they're very interested in these collections. City Palace, again, is an example of a beautiful, beautifully run and managed property. Not only the museum, which has great scholars such as Giles Tillotson, who's really written some important books about architectural history of India, but also the museum shop working together with local artisans, and especially their restaurant. So you will find that sometimes you have a great museum, but something is missing. Either the museum shop is missing or the restaurant is missing. And that we have this kind of whole concept of being visitor friendly, so that people can really utilize that. And then I mentioned Bilgaria Palace, with the next generation of owners like Akshita Banjdeo, who is focusing on sustainable tourism and social entrepreneurship to work with the tribal people around Bilgaria Palace. So we are very interested in supporting the idea of a heritage collection, because there are so many great initiatives of individual palaces, but we just don't know about it. But if we have a centralized platform, this would be really great for everyone. And of course, the hospitality sector. Many historic houses have been used as hotels, but we want to do a little bit more like that. So this is an example, I think, which is really beautiful. You see this fantastic museum shop in Merranger Fort, the beautiful cafe next to it, and above, this is a contemporary design of the cafe at City Palace Museum in Jaipur, both respectful to the architecture, but contemporary at the same time. Yeah. Here, for instance, if you look at the one picture, if you see it, these little tiny mirrored images, this could be an allusion to the Sheesh Mahal or to traditions in Kutch, for example, but in a contemporary way. It's really well done, I find, very successful. And now this is our latest project, which I'm really, really very happy about, namely the Center for Historic Houses Palace Museum Network. With the curator from the Louvre, we also have the director of curatorial practice from the Brooklyn Museum of Art in New York, who wants to collaborate. So really the whole world is very enthusiastic about such a network. We need to find sponsors also who support these initiatives, because I really think they are important and very unique, and both referring to India, but with a global aspect to it. The other aspect I mentioned is historic houses as a future for social entrepreneurship and for non-visitor related business models. And I'm very impressed with this young lady of only 27 years who is supporting local artisans and exhibiting these products in palaces, not only in Bulgaria, but in other historic palaces all over India. That's a wonderful initiative. Very unique. And this was actually featured in Vogue. So this is the idea of social entrepreneurship. Here we have Denkanal Palace. This family supported over 800 artisans, because artisans, these local artisans, they sell their wares mainly in front of temples or at weddings, and they can barely make ends meet. Sorry, aber kannst du mal die Mücken einschalten? Yeah, sorry, the mosquitoes here. And these are unique examples. one person supporting over 800 artisans. Don't you think this deserves our support? I really believe it does. And these people should not be alone, but they should have a network, a support system for these fantastic initiatives. And this is something we are currently working on. So we've been thinking about, and we are still looking also, we are currently getting together a board. We have some fantastic board members, including the vice president of the European Historic Houses Association. We want to have people from the business world, investment world, legal world to advise us, to help us with the center. So we are currently thinking of creating a heritage collection. We were thinking about what do people need during the pandemic and what would they buy. So for instance, we're thinking about a palace garden collection because a lot of people started gardening or they wanted fresh products. We're thinking about creating, let's say, masalas from the different royal families and baskets. So this was our idea for this. We are a university center, so some of these initiatives are not appropriate for the university. So we need to have an additional kind of body to support these initiatives. And when we talk about historic houses, of course, I said they are associated with the people. And what happened with independence at the time, not many people know that only 52% of India was under direct rule of the British. The rest was under the rule of the princes. And they all disappeared. So it is a kind of really bizarre situation because what is their role today? And people have different kind of associations. They think, of course, of the jewels, the gems, the great houses, and the collection of Rolls-Royce. But there's more to it, and sometimes it's used also in a kind of voyeuristic sense, and in advertising. But we wanted to have something with more substance. So this is the young next generation Maharaja Padmanabh Singh. I just give you this little video.
I think it's everything. Travel is the experiences that you have that make you a better person, and probably the person that you're meant to be. It makes you not only you learn so much about life, but about yourself. How you react in different situations. You meet so many different types of people from all different societies and all different walks of life that have had so many different experiences and how they deal with that. And for me, personally, I'm young, and now is the time that I can travel as much as I can, learn as much as I can, traveling about the world, about how people in different parts of the world function. And obviously one day come back home and try and implement all those things as much as I can at home. Well, I think I'm a very simple man, definitely. I love my family. I love the people that love me. I love the people close to me. I would like to be, as I said, as humble as I can, to treat everybody with the utmost respect that I'm able to. Especially the people that work for us. I think those are the people that work behind the scenes to make you who you are at the moment, and they are your roots. And if you don't respect that, nobody will respect you. So I always try to treat all the people that work for our family with, I just sometimes just stop my car and get out and speak to a guard or somebody else who's working, and ask them how they are, because nobody else does. And then, I love to travel. I love to meet new people. I'm only 20. I love to have a good time. I love fashion. I love to dress up. I think you can express so much about yourself just the way you dress. I love fine tailoring. I love to go through my grandfather's cupboard and see all his suits and all his various outfits and uniforms that we've had in our family for so many generations.
And so I think it's also really important to think about India as in in relationship with the luxury consumer goods sector, because there are so many talented craftsmen and fashion. Raghavendra Rathore was in the background, some of the things that the young Maharaja was wearing. And I think, we should be proud of this, accentuate this beautiful tradition of crafts and the skill and talent of the people here. And also, of course, polo, because, the royal families are very well known for sports and they excelled in this as well. If you think of Jamnagar, the Maharaja of Jamnagar, and cricket and polo in particular. So it's not only this kind of idleness, but it's really the excellence as well. But there's also another academic study to it and a real interest in the material culture associated with royal palaces and royal families. So here, for instance, you see this fantastic book written by Cynthia Frederick from the royal family of Kapurthala, who is also a board member at the Center for Historic Houses. It's a really brilliant book and so scholarly. And here, of course, many of the are now at the collection. And here you see a recent exhibition about the Maharaja of Indore at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs in Paris. So there is also this huge interest in museums and the scholarly world. Just one very short video about the fantastic exhibition at the V&A, the world's greatest design museum.
Jackson, you're the curator of Maharaja. I wonder if you could tell us just a little bit about the show.
Okay. Well, this is the first exhibition ever to explore the remarkable culture of India's kings. And we look at the incredible objects that were created for them from 1700 through to independence in 1947. Really, for the first time, we borrowed objects from the present-day Maharajas. We felt we couldn't really do a show like this without engaging them in the subject. And actually, they've been incredibly enthusiastic and supportive. We just had to convince them that their objects would be safe, not just physically safe, but intellectually safe, that we had something interesting and meaningful to say about the objects and about the heritage and the culture of the Maharajas.
Does it bring back memories for you of a different era?
Yes, it does. I was lucky enough to have grown up at a time when everything was still very much intact. It's now unfortunately disappeared, but throne rooms and crystal furniture and old portraits and chandeliers and darbar halls are all familiar playgrounds. As a child, I remember running through all these old palaces. We had a lot of freedom and a lot of fun. So yes, it does bring back memories.
You very kindly lent quite a lot of the objects which are in the show. Do you have a personal favourite or one that means a lot to you that you see?
Well, difficult to say which one particular object is closest to my heart, but the paintings, some of the paintings that have been picked and brought over here are absolutely masterpieces, and they have great historical relevance.
The Rolls Royce that features in the exhibition, that did at one time belong to your family, is that right?
Right. And then came the pandemic, and I knew we had to take everything digital, and I did this very, very quickly. So I started all of these social media groups, and I really didn't know anything about it. I just, watched a few YouTube videos, and I just got on with it. And when we did Palace Day, I came across this and I thought, why is there Palace Day without Indian palaces? And here you see Europe on the map, and now India. Over 40 palaces participated. It was really fantastic. And this was the first time that these palaces are kind of working together. And we had over 85,000 views on social media. And I thought that was considerable, especially for someone who was totally clueless about these things. And I was so pleased that UNESCO was supporting us, the World Monuments Fund, which is like the Rolls Royce among all of the heritage organizations worldwide. The Taj Group of Hotels has always been a great supporter from the very beginning, Imrana Hotel. And
Manoj, has speaker's voice become faint?
Oh, can you hear me? Is it
just
clear?
a little louder if you can, maybe? Yes.
Okay, yeah. And then we started this online lecture series, Resilience, Historic Houses of India and their Custodians. And this was really just a wonderful event. We did over 18 of these lectures with fantastic people and some art historians at the time explaining something about the property. And we had such a success with this. We had curators from the V&A, the world's leading design museum, from the Smithsonian Museum, the Brooklyn Museum of Art. We had design professionals from Dior, Cartier, academics from Oxford, Cambridge, MIT, Harvard, Durham, Cornell, many others. And I think we really benefited these houses because they afterwards were featured in the press and they were invited to many opportunities. And even during Palace Day, we generated business revenue amidst the pandemic when everybody else was having trouble. So, and I was really, really grateful. And I could see the power of these kind of social media activities. And we didn't need to spend anything. It was just our ideas that were generated. And we united young people like Akshita in her 27, and the oldest member was 84, the princess Harshit Kumari of Jamnagar. And we found a photograph of her old nanny that I was given by Francesca Cartier because they were family friends. And she hadn't seen this photograph in decades. So, lovely moments like this are really very, very memorable. So what are Maharajas known for? Yes. Something that maybe people didn't think about was their contribution to education, their excellence in sport, their patronage of the arts and the preservation of culture and nature. So here, for instance, you could see some of them are breeders of Marwari horses and they look after animal welfare. Maybe you didn't know that this particular fort is the only school in Asia for horseshoes and how to properly do this. I mean, these are fantastic contributions and I think they should be acknowledged. Or, someone like Amar Nath, who found something like this, who would touch it? Nobody. But look what he did with this building. You see the before and after. And these are the family-owned historic houses of India. And this is the kind of huge impact of the lecture series. New insights into the role and importance of royal families for local communities. Even scholars were surprised to hear about this. Increased visibility for historic houses. Several historic houses have been featured in the press and television, so on, even Vogue. Revenue generation through new business opportunities. And we are creating online content. We have been asked also now to create a museum for Salana Palace, for example. The center has become well known. We've been able to create a community of heritage experts and heritage lovers. And we have been invited to host a summer school at the Chateau Kapurthala in Missouri. Lovely, lovely collaborations have emerged from this. And just last week, we did our new lecture series. And look at the number of fantastic, these are the leading arts institutions in the world who were eager to participate. The Koto Institute is probably the world's leading conservation institute. City Palace Jaipur, the Getty Foundation, the world's premier arts foundation, the Louvre, English Heritage, Sotheby's Institute of Art, World Monuments Fund, European Historic Houses Association, Chateau de Vaux-le-Vicomte, which is the largest privately owned palace in France. And here you see the owner, Alexandre de Vaugois. Such a fantastic panel of speakers from the Smithsonian and always in dialogue with India. So I'm very proud of this achievement. So this is the social media analysis. And then finally, we have been chosen for by JP Morgan Chase for their Technology for Social Good program. We are currently creating something which I call Heritage at Risk, because in India, only 3,600 property are listed, which results in demolition of many historic buildings. So we want to use the internet to make this more visible and to actually show who is participating in the demolition, to discourage this. I also want to use it as a kind of dating app, so to say. This is the historic house with this particular property, maybe to attract investors, to run small businesses and so on. So I'm very excited about this opportunity. And then we've been selected recently by the University of Oxford for their internship program. I'm very proud that the University of Oxford thinks the center is good enough to sponsor 3 paid internships. This is where I would like to end. And so we are Taj is sponsoring this as well. They're giving us 5 days for all the interns for free in New Delhi. And the royal family of Kapurthala is hosting us for 10 days. And we are now currently discussing it with 2 organizations in Jaipur. And we are still looking to find sponsorship for a car. So we are trying to contact Tata Motors. So maybe if anyone from you kind of would like to support the center or knows anyone in this field so that we can have a car to travel to all of these places that we want to visit and work for, this would be fantastic. So I really hope you were inspired by the activities that the center is doing, and that you see that we are as much concerned about the past as we are concerned about the future, using every kind of possible strategy, from museum curation to digital solutions, to increase the visibility and the meaningfulness of these historic palaces of India, and to build the bridges between India and the rest of the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. That was a superb talk from you, Dr. Esther Schmidt. Not only you inspired us by how you followed your belief and put this whole thing together, this venture of yours, but you have also provided us with the knowledge and the exposure to our very own history and heritage, and that too in such a brilliant way. Thank you for addressing us, and we would love to keep in touch with you going forward. So now the floor is open for questions. Let me see the gallery view. Any questions from the Midtowners?
Yes.
I think Tilak has a question. Tilak? You are muted, Tilak.
Oh, just see, someone went to the village of Hammersbach. How lovely is this? I can't believe this. Really? Who would have guessed?
That was me.
Oh.
That was me. We had a day's trip around Hanau, and Hammersbach was one of the places we visited because there are many historic places around Hanau.
Yes, yes.
And I'm also the same person who's related to the Bhajdeo family.
To which family?
To the Bhajdeo family, the Merbhaj family. So I would be happy to talk to you privately.
Yes.
About that.
Oh, I can't
I've also
wait.
sent you a message.
Yes, you have my email address.
No, I don't. Could you please?
I'll pass it on to you, Ajay. I'll pass it on to you.
Okay.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Pass on your address. It's very important we can communicate with you. Because
thank you. I just share it also so that you have it, and please look at the Center for Historic Houses website, right? We've shared it. We have a YouTube channel. As I said, I initiated all of these channels. We have a very active Facebook group of about 4,000 people. Many of the owners of historic houses in India are part. And I'm just sharing this. And I'm sharing my also WhatsApp number. Some people might be more comfortable with this. So.
Wonderful.
So there is so much to do. I think, considering the fact that not a single rupee has been spent, just think about this, what we have achieved. I think that, deserves some credit for what we have done.
Yes, it's really wonderful that it has become so much accessible to us. And I wonder if in the historic houses, you wanted to take some ordinary houses of people to understand the lifestyle.
Definitely. Yes. Any historic house. We just don't include religious buildings. We only look at homes, historic houses as homes.
Yeah, for example, in the south, there are beautiful homes.
Yes.
Or in Rajasthan, there are beautiful homes, or in Kutch, there are beautiful homes.
In fact, yes, we have included one, which is a beautiful Haveli. If you want to look at our lecture series, it's called Neela House. And it's a fantastic initiative by the Lady Bamford Foundation. Lady Bamford she created the most successful organic farming business in the UK. She is also married to the billionaire, Lord Bamford, and they own a beautiful historic house. And she created a fantastic institution in Jaipur for crafts and so on. It's a very simple house and it's really wonderful. I just ordered some beautiful plates. I'll just write this down. Look that up, Neela House. Just a beautiful example. So
Neela House in which place? In which place, city?
Jaipur.
Oh, okay, because we have a Neela House in Bombay.
Ah, so. Yeah. So, and you see, even from my biography, I even stayed in a hen house. I'm interested in historic, from a palace to hen.
It's important.
Also in Sidhpur in Gujarat. And Mr. Abuzar will be able to vouch for it. There are beautiful Havelis.
Yes.
I'm in touch with
which are not looked after.
People in Gujarat. Yeah.
No, but Sidhpur is a doing of our own organization from the Rotary, and that is one Mr. Abuzar, who used to be our president. And it's worthwhile seeing his collection. It's what he has done to the city.
I mean, but what we really need now, because the organization has grown so much, and I just often have 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I can no longer handle this on my own. Every day I'm getting so many projects, and there's so much work that needs to be done. It's too much for me. I really need
to increase the number of people. There'll be lots of people who will join you to come on your team to do the work with you.
Yes, I need, but I need someone, an assistant who's like regularly there, who does, things that are, I don't know, email sending and, following up and keeping the timetable and so on. I need that. And we need really a car to be able to visit all of these places, because now with the pandemic, I don't want to use public transport or taxis because it's not safe.
Would you like to visit Sidhpur?
Yes. I like to visit any place in India, so I'm.
So organize.
Pardon?
Why don't you show her some pictures, Abuzar?
I can just share the link now on the book which I have written.
Mimi, I think I sent you the article about Sidhpur. I think I emailed it to you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
more questions?
Well, I just wanted to say that these are the private palaces we are talking about, but the amount of monuments that we have in India which are neglected like anything.
Yeah.
If something were to be done to that, our tourist industry would flourish like anything.
Exactly. You see, we have to start somewhere. And we cannot start with conservation because even the Indian government is overwhelmed. I mean, how can they look after these properties? How can I, as a one-man person, be involved in conservation? So we knew from the beginning we will focus on what to do with the historic houses. And that was also unique because a lot of people only focus on conservation, and this is no longer enough. Even if you have someone like the World Monuments Fund, if they give a lot of money and restore it like into a jewel, if you don't take care of it, a few years later, you'll end up having this problem. So management is key. And this is something that we really started. And in order to get results, I needed to work with private people, but I'm also in touch with many citizen-driven organizations. Like currently is a fantastic organization almost everywhere in India, particularly now in Patna. This is a very active group. And many buildings are being demolished in Patna overnight and so on. So we are in touch with them. We are in touch with people in Kolkata, Ahmedabad, and so on, all of these citizen-driven initiatives. And the government has this adopt a monument idea, which I like the idea of private-public partnership very much. And I think we should enable normal people, not only kind of billionaires, to also have a say. And because there are many of them in India who really care about the heritage, and it's these kind of developers that are the problem, that speak to politicians and so on, and then just demolish buildings. So this is something we also want to be more politically active. As I said, we want to have private property should be a constitutional right, and also open, give a say to people about their heritage. Yeah. So this is something we really.
So you're based in Delhi. Do you have a Bombay chapter?
Well, we work nationally and internationally. The center is part of Jindal University, which is in Sonipat. This is outside of Delhi.
Yeah.
But yes, I think we have the chapters basically through the owners, right? The owners of their historic houses. But as I said, we work with heritage experts, with owners, and with the public, with these three stakeholders. And whatever we create, the initiatives we create are always with all of these people in mind. Some of our events are more academic. They are more for the heritage experts. Others are for everyone. Like, there's a huge interest, let's say, in the resilience lecture series, right? If we have a conservation panel, this is more academic. But the resilience lecture series is also like owners talking, not heritage experts talking, owners themselves tell their story. This is really important.
You're doing wonderful work for India.
Thank you.
I must appreciate. Really, really wonderful.
It's making it so accessible and so interactive. It's wonderful that we should do this.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Dr.
Yes.
That was a great talk, very, very illuminating. I was just wondering, at a different level, are you at the heritage sector able to prevent heritage properties from being demolished, like the Bamia Buddhas in Afghanistan, or Aleppo in Syria, or
working on this. I mean, this is when I mentioned the JP Morgan Chase Fellowship. We are using the internet as a platform to make it visible and transparent. We will record everything, when it was demolished, and also who is in charge, what politician is in charge. All of this will be made visible for the world. And so this is really a very important initiative, and I cannot overestimate the importance of the internet for this. But one other thing that I say is I really need to be able to employ and also have visiting scholars. Any organization cannot only have one person, because in order for the organization, the business to flourish in the future, you need to have more voices, not only one. So this is now our really next step, that I want to be able to hire the best minds. This has always been my principle. Even if I have friends and friendships, I will not hire my friends unless they don't have a worldwide expertise in this. I only work with the best. This has been my best principle in my life. Whenever I don't listen to this, it goes terribly wrong. So I want to work with the best. I want to be able to employ the best. And as I said, I have all the students and so on from Oxford so keen to work with the center. And we are an unknown organization. We are only 1 year old. This is an achievement. But now we need to have, these interns come and go. I have to train them again and again. It's costing me a lot of time as well. So I need permanent staff. I need people who come for at least a year or two, and also to increase publications, because look what I'm organizing. This is a huge amount of work, but I need to publish as well. And I need to have more people to get involved and publish. And for this, I need an endowment. It doesn't go beyond. I am the master of creating things out of nothing, but there needs to be some financial benefits. And this is where I really need some help with fundraising and so on at this stage, because now the center is too big for this.
Dr. Schmidt, if I may ask, like if you sum it up in one sentence, what is the objective of the center?
The objective of the center is to use historic houses to improve communities, basically, through business plans, non-visitor and visitor-related business plans. So this is what I started basically. If you only have historic houses and you want to restore them, it's still a dead monument. We need to respect the past, but use these monuments to improve lives in communities through education and business schemes, to give employment, to do capacity building. All of these things can be done through historic houses.
Through tourism, right?
But then,
for tourism, yes.
Not only. This is the one thing that we say. Also beyond tourism, we can create farmers markets, we can create products, because these historic houses in the past were autonomous. They had workshops of artisans, they had their dairy farms and so on, but you turn this into a business model, You create, you produce things. I have so many faults, and I visit properties and people tell me we don't have the funds to restore this property. But why do you only think about hotels? Who would go into the middle of nowhere to stay in this hotel? Nobody. So let's use this right now and generate money by working with the local communities and create objects and crafts, like I said, with the heritage collection, beautiful baskets. Every area in India has very talented craftspeople and a very unique crafts tradition. And this is associated with the palace. And then you can sell them. Currently, in my last heritage event last week, everybody was amazed in Europe. And we also decided we want to work together. For instance, we have one palace, they started producing 1,000 liters of olive oil. I buy this olive oil here, you buy other things from us. The historic houses support each other. Or for instance, if they have a cafe, they buy the tea from us because some people are producing teas. Why should you buy it from companies? Buy it from other historic houses, small farms and so on. If you want to buy new ceramics, why don't you go to Neela House, order it from there? Don't order it from a big company. Don't go to Amazon and so on. This is a kind of, conscious way of consumption as well.
Mimi, which was the restoration or of one of the couple of historic houses which had a huge challenge, but they did a fantastic job of restoring the property or the historic house. A couple of examples in India can think of.
Yes.
Merranger.
Merranger
Fort,
Bilgaria Palace is so lovely. If you want to, I can show you a 2-minute video of Bilgaria Palace. It's very well done by these two young girls, only in their 20s. Would you like to see this example?
Yeah, okay, I guess, a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's only 2 minutes. Let me just find it for you and I screen share it again.
This house is a house that is already like worked upon by the center, right? That's what it signifies.
All right, it's here now. I go to screen share. Because when you talk about historic houses, you really need to see it. You can't only talk. Can you see this?
Yes, we can. Yeah, you understand. You can enlarge the screen, I guess, at your end.
You might not be able to see it then.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Well, you see, I can give you lots and lots of examples. There are many great examples, but we need the one platform to showcase all of them.
So fascinating. So this is one of the restored houses. This is open to tourism.
Yeah. And this was actually only a guest house built at the time of the British Raj for guests. And in fact, the first Tata enterprise started there as well. So they were always open to welcome visitors. And now it's reinvented as for sustainable tourism and for all of these various social entrepreneurship initiatives.
Where is this?
This is Bilgaria in Orissa.
In Baripada. Can I ask you a quick question, Mimi?
Yeah.
In Baripada, the Morbhanjis had two palaces. The big one was made into a technical college.
Right.
Is this now the smaller one, or is this something quite different?
You know, the sisters are still involved in these educational projects. It's now a college and so on, but it's no longer used by the family. I'm only aware of the Bilgaria Palace, but I know that I've seen images of the other beautiful palaces, and one of them was actually modeled after Buckingham Palace. It's
wow.
A version of it, yeah.
Well, that's the one that became the technical college.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know, it's very sad. Some of these lawsuits, as I said, they go on for decades. Some of them were only, you know, clarified last year and so on. You know, this some problems, for instance, in Udaipur and also Rampur. The Rampur only was, you know, because of heritage disputes and so on, inheritance disputes only last year. It goes on for decades and so on. And the amendment to the Enemy Property Act was done in 2017. There was no clarity to the owners for decades. And, you know, this is not good for buildings. You know, in the moment a building is unattended, it decays.
Yeah, what was also sad was that the content of these buildings, because of these court cases running, were disposed of underhand, and there is an enormous amount of treasure that was sold to just support living.
Exactly.
And it's a shame that many of those things are gone.
So, you know, basically what we are doing also at the center, we are offering a forum because, as I said, the princes have disappeared. And, you know, this is why we also chose the word resilience, because these houses have been able to withstand wars, conquests, extreme climates, and so on. But now they're all gone. What is happening with them? What is their role? And not only in a voyeuristic way in the tabloids, but they deserve a serious study. And they should be acknowledged for how they contribute to society as well.
Yeah, because the princely states were abolished and they went into privy purses. And
yes, and that was taken away. And many of these kind of accession treaties, they are no longer relevant and so on. And
it's so hard for them to live their standard of life. So,
and to preserve a house like this, if you don't have the servants in the privy purse, you know, if you anybody who owns a historic house, if you have to repair the roof, you are bankrupt. You know, this is over $1 million and so on. Yeah.
I think we are running short of time. Any more questions, members?
Okay.
So we have your...
I can only say in my last sentence, please support the Center for Historic Houses. You've been here longer than I have. You know India better than I do. No. And we need every support that we can get.
Sure, but I'm not so sure we know India more than you after this. No, but this was superb. We are so happy you came and addressed us and spoke to us. Gave us another exposure to another part of India, which we generally are not exposed to, especially in Mumbai. You know, since it's a concrete jungle, as you say, Mumbai. So we would love to go deeper into it. We have your email ID, we have your website, and your WhatsApp number. I have noted it down, and I will also share with the members.
And I would also like to connect with the Germans in the audience, particularly. Please get in touch with me. Where's the gentleman? Also from Nidda, even this place not far from my home. Is he still there? And
yeah, I'll pass on your details to him, don't worry.
Yes. I would really love to connect also with the German community. Always happy. And I must say that the German embassy also supported Palace Day. I forgot to mention that because we were using Manikbad Palace, which was built by a German architect, Muthesius. Yeah.
Bernard, I will take it forward now and request Bernard to thank Dr. Schmidt for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, ESTHER Schmidt. I must say, very remarkable. And for the fact that you've been here only since 2019, I tell you, you have a great future to go. I personally have been in India since 1993, and the first building I moved in was a palace. It was the Tata Palace in Mumbai. At Deutsche Bank bought for its headquarters. It was fully renovated, still there very much in Mumbai, and a brilliant example for a heritage building that could be preserved. And it was a great honor for me to be involved in this project, but that is a long time ago. I think your project, the Center of Historic Houses, is an outstanding project. And I think you have already contacted the right people. Of course, Amarnath and Francis Weizsäck, late Francis Weizsäck, with their Merranger Fort approach is the right approach. And they do not only have Merranger Fort, they have so many Havelis in Kochi. They have the old houses they renovated in Pondicherry, and I just could continue like that. But you, of course, mentioned also the Taj hotels. You said you haven't been in the Lake Palace. That comes as a surprise because I mean, that's a total must. But if you wait to get married, of course, then you have to take your time. That's absolutely understandable. But I'm sure you'll find your Maharaja. Don't worry about it. And but of course, you probably know Maharana Arvind Singh Meva. He was in the film, and of course, his palace, not only the Lake Palace, but the main palace in Udaipur is absolutely outstanding and a must to visit, but of course also the palace, the Taj Umayyad Bhavan in Jodhpur, the Falakuma in Hyderabad, the Dasefa in Varanasi, and so many of the Taj hotels. So you have to meet Puneet Chatwal, the big boss of the Taj group of hotels. As I said, he has a German passport. He lived in Germany, in Frankfurt. He still has his house in Sachsenhausen. So from that angle, it should be very easy. By the way, I was also born in Frankfurt, so around the corner from where you are from. So from that angle, it's really a small world. I think there is a lot of scope for cooperation. In 2019, when you started, Chancellor Merkel was here for the Indo-German intergovernmental consultations, and with her was Monika Grüters, our Minister for Culture, a good friend of ours for many, many years. And actually, they are working on a collaboration for heritage, for culture between Germany and India. 3 years ago, Monika was here with Mr. Dorgelo, who is the boss of Humboldt Forum, which is just being opened, which is the big new museum in the old castle in Berlin. And they are working on a lot of heritage aspects. So I think that would be something you should look into with the German embassy, because in this collaboration between Germany and India, heritage culture plays a major role. And so from that angle, I think that would be an avenue to follow up. And then, of course, we have Jojitya Jain, a good friend, an old friend of Germany. He was the founder of the Art and Craft Museum in Delhi and a connoisseur on heritage. You must meet him if you have not met him. He got the Order of Merit of the German government, actually handed over by Monika Grüters only about 4 years ago. And so we have a very good rapport and close annex between Germany and India when it comes to culture, when it comes to heritage. Muthesius, you of course mentioned, but we could mention many others. So from that angle, I think you are on the right start, the right track. And just having started in 2019, don't worry about it. So much work to do. I'm sure you will go wonders. And for us at Rotary, it's a big honor to have you speaking this year, because this year, the global Rotary president is a German, Holger Knaak. The next Rotary president will be an Indian, Shekhar Mehta. And by the way, after that, finally, the first ever Rotary International president will be a woman, Jennifer Jones from Canada. So from that angle, woman power like you, that's what we need. That is where the future are. And I'm very positive about the Center for Historic Houses. You will do wonders. And by the way, please come to Mumbai. Mumbai is full of hidden treasures.
Yes, yes.
And the Tata Palace is only one. But when you go to the old city of Mumbai, I tell you, it's a jewel. And so much to see when you go to Apollo Banda, no matter where you go.
I'm very keen about
Please come, stay at the Taj. I could say be my guest because Punit Chatwal is my vice president at the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. He will be my president in September. So from that angle, not to worry. And we'll get your car, don't worry. Because Günter Buczek is the big boss of Tata Motors. He still is. He's going to leave now, but don't worry. We get you a car.
Great, great. Because actually one person, you know, Volkswagen, of course, is part of Bentley. And Bentley was sponsoring the 8-week trip of a German prince from Dresden to Italy, the Grand Tour. They sponsored this, providing the Bentley for the 8 weeks. So yeah, brilliant. By the way, I should say the director of Prussian Palaces and Gardens is also a friend of the center, and he has given a fantastic lecture. He is the best speaker. I mean, wonderful work, really. We love
Thank you, Bernard, for the excellent vote of thanks.